Let me start with my outrage and sorrow for the death of 3 brave U.S. troops in Jordan and for the other troops who were wounded. The President and I will not tolerate attack on U.S. forces, and we will take all necessary actions to defend the U.S. and our troops. Now, at this important time, I'm glad to be back at the Pentagon. I feel good and am recovering well, but still recovering. And I appreciate all the good wishes that I've received thus far. And welcome back, Ms. Secretary General. Thank you. It's great to see you. It's a pleasure to get to host you here today. You know, over the past 3 years, we've worked closely together, and I want to thank you for your leadership. And you've heard me say that a number of times, and it is heartfelt. I have really watched you lead the alliance through some very challenging times. You've kept NATO united and resolute through the most serious threat to transatlantic security since the end of the Cold War. Over the nearly 2 years since Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, NATO has grown stronger and more united than ever. NATO became even more capable last year when Finland joined. And I'm very pleased that the Turkish parliament voted last week for Sweden to join NATO as well. And we're looking forward to welcoming Sweden to NATO soon.
Let me start by express my condolences for the U.S. troops killed and wounded in Jordan. This demonstrates once again the risk that servicemen are exposed to when they stand up for our values and take part in missions operations where we protect freedom and the values we all believe in. Iran continues to destabilize the region. This includes backing terrorists who attack our ships in the Red Sea, and the US is leading international efforts to end these attacks. We will, as you mentioned, also discuss Russia's war aggression against Ukraine, and the war is now nearing the 2-year mark. The situation on the battlefield is challenging, but NATO allies are providing unprecedented support to Ukraine, and it is important that we continue to do so. Our support to Ukraine is not charity, it is an investment in our own security, because the world will become more dangerous if President Putin wins in Ukraine, and this is also closely watched in China, in Beijing, so that makes it even more important that we continue to support Ukraine. And therefore I also welcome the leadership of you and President Biden in ensuring that we are going to continue to support Ukraine.
В целом уровень напряженности очень тревожный, и наоборот сейчас время шагов по деэскалации напряженности. Это единственное, что может помочь нам предотвратить дальнейшее расползание.
מחבלים יישארו. זה המצב הטבעי, ואנחנו נלחם בכיסא התנגדות. עוד נקודה ועוד פשיטה, וזה ייקח חודשים, זה לא ייקח יום אחד. מצד שני, אין להם אספקה, אין להם תחמושת, אין להם תגבורות, קשה להם לטפל בעצמם, פצועים ודברים אחרים. חיסלנו כבר רבע מהמחבלים של החמאס לפחות, אני חושב שאפילו יותר. ויש עוד מספר כזה שהם פצועים. ככה כשאתה מסתכל על הדברים, הייתי אומר, יש 3 מטרות היום למלחמה. 1 זה לחסל את החמאס, 2 להחזיר את החטופים, 3 לשמור על אחדות עם ישראל, זה גם מטרה.
Well, actually, I think that right now, I will describe it, the progress that we are making in the last couple of weeks is we are in a much better place than where we were a few weeks ago. That there was a clear demand of the permanent ceasefire ahead of the negotiations, which I believe that we moved from that place to a place where it has potentially might lead to a ceasefire permanently in the future, and this is what we are all aiming for, because we've seen also the suffering of the people in Gaza, and we've seen the amount of destruction over there. I think yesterday was good progress made to get things back in shape and to at least to lay a foundation for the way forward. We cannot say that this will make us, in better shape very soon, but we are hoping actually to relay this proposal to Hamas and to get them to a place where they engage positively and constructively in the process, because we think that in today's world, I think that's the only game in town now, and that will be the only way to get the situation de-escalated. And we hope that both parties taking this opportunity to get, of course, to make the war stop, but also to get the hostages back to them. Actually, what we've been warning from is the bigger picture in the region, and we've been warning from day one that this war has a potential of expanding and spillover in the region, and we are seeing this building up, unfortunately, in the last 3 months and a half. I hope that nothing would undermine the efforts that we are doing or jeopardize the process, yet it will definitely have an impact on it, and it will one way or another, it will have an impact on the regional security, and we hope that things get contained and not to get escalated beyond control.
In the first go-round, we were able, with our partners in Qatar and Egypt, to get an agreement that resulted in the release of more than 100 hostages. And I believe that the proposal that is on the table and that is shared among all of the critical actors, of course, Israel, but also with Qatar and Egypt playing a critical role in mediating and working between Israel and Hamas. I believe the proposal is a strong one and a compelling one that, again, offers some hope that we can get back to this process. But Hamas will have to make its own decisions. I can just tell you that there is, again, strong, I would say, alignment among the countries involved that this is a good and strong proposal. And
Secretary General shared with us the information concerning the individual cases, and countries expressed their national positions on this issue. And I'm sure the spokesperson of the Secretary General will continue to share with you their understanding of the very unique situation. As for China, definitely we are also watching the development, the new developments very closely. We are also shocked about the allegations. We think the Secretary General's decision is timely, is prompt, is efficient. We hope that the investigation will be really independent, impartial, and objective. And that said, definitely we are at a very critical moment in coping with the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. And the war is still going on, the killings are going on, people's sufferings are going on. So whatever happens, we should not allow these individual cases to dilute our attention in pursuing a ceasefire, and a ceasefire as early as possible. We do believe that's urgently needed. And meanwhile, all the humanitarian efforts must be continued. We are seeing really deteriorating humanitarian situation, and people have nowhere to go, and people have nothing to abstain for their survival. So these individual cases, while it's important to have for the investigations, should not deny the fact that UNRWA is a humanitarian agency and UNRWA is providing a humanitarian lifeline for the Palestinians, and UNRWA's continuing functioning is extremely important there. So we hope that countries, we understand their national assessments, but meanwhile we firmly believe that the continuing support, in particular financial support to UNRWA, is extremely important. We hope that with our joint efforts we can really lessen the sufferings of the Palestinian people and also avoiding creating extra punishment to the Palestinians at this very, very difficult time.
Is China ready to step up and give more funding to UNRWA if other countries don't resume?
We are a constant donor to that. Of course, we are not a very big one, but our support to UNRWA has been always consistent. We have, I believe our support will continue. And meanwhile, through bilateral channels, we have provided humanitarian aid to the people in Gaza, through Rafah, and also to the Palestinian authorities. And we have organized several batches, and that has been completed. And our continuing support through the bilateral channel will also continue.
Should the countries reverse their decisions? Do you call on them to reverse their decisions?
Well, I hope they will look at the situation and make very, very prudent decisions on that. Definitely, we are facing a very, very unique, complicated situation in Gaza. It's an occupied territory, and people there have been suffering for decades, and people are fighting for their self-determination. I believe countries, while make their decision concerning their suspension of their contribution to UNRWA, should also take all those elements into account.
UN staff were among the perpetrators of the October 7 massacre. UN staff, their salaries paid for with international taxpayer money, were involved in the barbaric, premeditated atrocities and abductions. At least 13 UNRWA employees are implicated in the massacre. 10 Hamas operatives, 2 Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and 1 unaffiliated. Of those, 6 UNRWA employees infiltrated Israel in the attack, 5 were Hamas, 1 unaffiliated. 4 UNRWA employees were involved in abducting Israelis, including 2 of those who infiltrated Israeli territory. Another 3 UNRWA employees, all Hamas, were summoned via text message to arrive at an assembly point on the night of October 6th and directed to equip themselves with weapons. At least 1 UNRWA employee supplied the Hamas invasion with logistical support. Another was directed to establish an operations room on October 8th. Not only does the evidence show that UNRWA staff were involved in the massacre, they were also directly implicated in holding hostages once they were in Gaza. At least 2 Israeli survivors of Hamas captivity have testified that they were held in the homes of UNRWA teachers. One of them, as Channel 13 reported, was moved between hideouts through UNRWA facilities. UNRWA is riddled with Hamas members. Our intelligence indicates that out of approximately 12,000 UNRWA employees in the Gaza Strip, about 10% are Hamas or Islamic Jihad operatives, and another 50% are first-degree relatives of a Hamas operative. But Hamas is even more deeply embedded in UNRWA. Its infrastructure is literally embedded in UNRWA sites. The IDF has uncovered multiple instances of Hamas military infrastructure located inside UNRWA facilities, including schools and hospitals. Our troops have unearthed extensive Hamas infrastructure built into UNRWA schools, from tunnels to terrorist hideouts. Hamas uses these facilities under the UN logo to store arms, base rocket launchers, run headquarters, and locate tunnel shafts for the swift movement of forces throughout the Gaza Strip who can then hide beneath the shield of the United Nations. Hamas routinely uses UNRWA schools as hideouts as part of its human shield strategy, blending into the civilian population in a way that it hopes will give it immunity. In many cases, Hamas and TIJ fire rockets and mortar shells from nearby and even within UNRWA schools.
The United Nations taking swift action following the extremely serious allegations made against several staff members from UNRWA. The contracts of those staff members directly involved have been terminated, as we told you on Friday. An investigation by the UN's Office of Internal Oversight Services was immediately activated. The Secretary General has remained very active on this issue throughout the weekend and this morning. A few moments ago, he met with the Undersecretary General head of OIOS to ensure that the investigation will be done swiftly and as efficiently as possible. Any employee involved in acts of terror will be held accountable, including through criminal prosecution. And as we said, the Secretariat is ready to cooperate with a competent authority to prosecute the individuals in line with the Secretariat's normal procedure for such cooperation. We've seen this reference to a dossier. We saw it in the Times, in the Wall Street Journal, in CBS. I'm not going to name all the media organizations, but we respect them all. That information has not been given to us officially by the Israeli authority. The critical humanitarian work that the UN does, not only in Gaza, all over the region, needs to be supported. People's lives depend on it. We are doing in parallel, taking very seriously all the allegations that have been made. We are being forward-leaning.
Det er en prioritet for regeringen, og heldigvis også et bredt flertal i Folketinget, at vi nu skal sikre, at den indsats og den terrorlignende aktivitet, Houthierne begår i og omkring det Røde Hav, at det skal vi gøre alt for at være med til at stoppe, og ikke mindst også beskytte den civile skibstrafik. Det er vigtigt at sige, at hvis man tænker, at svaret til Houthierne er, at man bare skal lade den få lov til at terrorisere den frie verdenshandel, så går man i et forkert ærne. Det er også derfor, at vi nu sammen med amerikanerne, britterne, nu viser et ansvar, det synes jeg faktisk er med til at sende et signal om, at vi ikke finder os i det, der finder sted.
Well, the mandate for this mission is, of course, only to defend and secure the maritime environment in the Red Sea. So that's our primary task. So we are not, with this ship, a part of the offensive operations in the Red Sea.
红海水域是重要的国际货物和能源贸易通道。我们不希望红海局势紧张，呼吁停止袭扰民用船只的行为，主张切实尊重包括也门在内的红海沿岸国的主权，致力于同各方一道，为缓解红海紧张局势做出积极努力。红海局势升级，根源在于加沙冲突外溢，尽快平息加沙战火，有助于红海局势的缓和。我们敦促加沙冲突各方切实落实联合国安理会和联大相关决议，立即停火止战。国际社会应为此进行协调行动。
Last point I would make: we agreed that President Biden and President Xi should speak, and should speak by telephone relatively soon. I think the acknowledgement coming out of Woodside that there really is no substitute for leader-to-leader conversation. I mean, it became so apparent over the course of that meeting at Woodside how central that ingredient has to be to an effective stewardship of U.S.-China policy. And so both of us agreed that we would report back to our leaders and we would get them on the phone sooner rather than later. Since then, we've seen Beijing take initial steps to stem the flow of precursor chemicals used to make fentanyl, progress that we hope and need to see continue. The first interagency counter-narcotics working group between the U.S. and the PRC met today in Beijing, and our aim is to open up law enforcement cooperation on fighting this terrible drug. Second, President Biden and President Xi announced the resumption of military-to-military communication that had been frozen for more than a year. The chairman of our Joint Chiefs of Staff has now spoken with his counterpart, and we've restored a number of critical operator-level mechanisms.
Entonces, es muy demagógica la postura. Vamos a cerrar las fronteras. Sí, por ejemplo, lo respeto mucho al presidente Biden, se ha portado muy bien. Antes también lo hizo el presidente Trump, fue muy respetuoso de nosotros. Entendemos las circunstancias, pero imagínense cerrar la frontera. Sí, con todo respeto, con un poco de luz en la frente, no se podría pensar que esa es una solución. Imagínense el nivel de integración económica, comercial. Somos los principales socios comerciales de Estados Unidos en el mundo. ¿Cómo se va a cerrar la frontera? Es otra la agenda. Pues eso no es serio, con todo respeto. ¿Cómo vamos a resolver los problemas de migración?
정쟁이나 위헌의 소지를 정당화하는 수단이 될 수는 없습니다. 헌법적 가치를 수호해야 할 의무가 있는 정부로서는 이번 특별법안을 그대로 공포해야 하는지 심사숙고할 수밖에 없습니다. 정부는 유가족과 피해자 여러분의 요청사항에 귀 기울이며 진정으로 도움이 되는 방안이 무엇인지 함께 고민하고 해결 방안을 모색하겠습니다. 유가족과 피해자께서 조속히 일상을 회복하실 수 있도록 재정적, 심리적 지원을 확대하는 한편 안타까운 희생을 예우하고 온전히 추모할 수 있는 공간을 만드는 일도 적극 추진하겠습니다.